Hello everyone, I hope the weight of life isn't bearing down too hard on you today. Today I wanted to react to Ethan Bishop's views on antinatalism. I hope you enjoy.
This video I'm going to be talking about anti-natalism again. My last video about anti-natalism got a whole fuck ton of dislikes compared to likes, and to be honest I couldn't give less of a fuck. Firstly, if you saw that video and you disliked it simply because you disagreed, you are very childish. Instead of trying to tear someone down due to a contention, wouldn't it make more sense to politely and charitably try to hash that out? Secondly, if your goal is to deplatform me or incentivize me to cease making videos, you're disadvantaging yourself by disliking it, because matter of fact, I look at the videos that get a lot of dislikes and I essentially create more of the same content. This is because if there are a lot of dislikes, there are usually a lot of views as well. So even though you dislike the video, you are essentially promoting it by viewing it and incentivizing me to make more of the same content, hence this video. If you want me to stop making videos, just don't watch them. That'd make a hell of a lot more sense.
Generally, if people dislike your video, they don't like what you said in that video, and the whole point of the dislike button is to make the feeling that they don't like your video known to you as the creator. It normally doesn't mean they want you to stop making content, but rather rationalize out your views better or have a better use of modus ponens and modus tollens during your video in order to arrive at more logical conclusions.
That being said, I do think there was an issue with my previous video, that being that I didn't deploy my main argument against antinatalism. I deployed it in my video titled It is immoral, or Is It Immoral to Have Kids, but for the record I'll deploy it again. I think that antinatalism is false because causing suffering isn't necessarily bad if there is more well-being being perpetuated overall. So even though when you're having kids you're causing non-consensual inevitable suffering, that doesn't necessarily matter if it could be said that the life would be more positive than negative, and their existence would probably have a more positive than negative effect on the overall well-being, which can be said in some situations.
I would agree with that point if he is able to make it. However, I think that such a point would be impossible to make due to the endemic nature of pain within reality and existence.
Antinatalists tend to fall into a hole of thinking of things that are far too simplistic. So, for example, the notion that it would be bad to cause non-consensual inevitable suffering because suffering is bad. This is a demented form of absolutism that most likely contradicts with other beliefs that an antinatalist may hold. I'd like to bring your attention to a hypothetical I've thought of. Let's say you've adopted a dog, and this dog requires emergency heart surgery, and of course this dog will experience non-consensual inevitable suffering as a result of this surgery, but this dog's life would be better overall in the case of the surgery taking place. An antinatalist who holds this absolutist principle of it being immoral to expose others to non-consensual inevitable suffering would be forced to say it is immoral to give this dog emergency heart surgery, and if they didn't think it was immoral, that would clearly contradict the absolutist principle that you claim to be holding while holding a view that clearly contradicts it.
There is so much to unpack here. First of all, your premise relating to antinatalism is incorrect. Antinatalists believe that the best state of existence is the state that you are at before you are born, and that no amount of joy within this world will be able to outweigh the joy, or rather lack of suffering which you experienced before you were born. Suffering is born from striving, and joy is born from the attainment of said thing that was strived for, and therefore the lack of striving is the lack of suffering. Before conception you strived for nothing, as you were not in need of anything, therefore before you were born you were in the state of maximal joy. Also, to the point about giving the dog surgery, I think that pretty much everyone would agree that giving the dog surgery would be the good option. This example has nothing to do with antinatalism, however.
If good is defined as what's desirable, and bad is defined as what is undesirable, how could you say bad is more undesirable than good is desirable? For everything that is undesirable, you could find something that is just as desirable as these things are undesirable. This is analogous to saying that the cold is more cold than the warmth is warm. It's like saying the yin is more yin than the yang is yang.
This again has nothing to do with antinatalism, so I could just discount it. However, I am feeling a bit combative today, so I might as well delve into this idea. First, let me cite an excerpt from Jesus Ignacio Aldapurita's book The Eyes. It goes as follows. Consider the capacity of the human body for pleasure. Sometimes, it is pleasant to eat, to drink, to see, to touch, to smell, to hear, to make love. The mouth, the eyes, the fingertips. The nose, the ears, the genitals, our voluptific faculties, if you will forgive me the coinage, are not exclusively concentrated in these places, but it is undeniable that they are concentrated here. The whole body is susceptible to pleasure, but in places there are wells from which it may be drawn up in greater quantity. But not inexhaustibly. How long is it possible to know pleasure? Rich Romans ate to satiety, and then purged their overburdened bellies and ate again. But they could not eat forever. A rose is sweet, but the nose becomes habituated to its scent. And what of the most intense pleasures, the personality-annihilating ecstasies of sex? Even if I were a woman, and could string orgasm on orgasm like beads upon a necklace, in time I should sicken of it. Yet consider pain. Give me a cubic centimeter of your flesh and I could give you pain that would swallow you as the ocean swallows a grain of salt. And you would always be ripe for it, from before the time of your birth to the moment of your death. We are always in season for the embrace of pain. To experience pain requires no intelligence, no maturity, no wisdom, no slow working of the hormones in the moist midnight of our innards. We are always ripe for it, all life is ripe for it. Consider the ways in which we may gain pleasure. Consider the ways in which we may be given pain. The one is to the other as the moon is to the sun. The point here is that pain abounds much more than pleasure. Here I will cite an extract from the book Vanya by the worst one. It goes as follows. Think of life in its most primal form, the act of one animal engaged in the consumption of another. Could one say that the joy of one animal outweighs the suffering of another, that satiety is the counterbalance to suffering, or appetite the ally of agony? It is clear here that the pain outweighs pleasure as an elephant outweighs a feather.
So now that I've tackled the common antinatalist talking point of suffering being more bad than well-being is good, I'm now going to tackle their talking point concerning consent. So I'd like to bring your attention to another hypothetical. Let's say you have a girlfriend, because obviously in real life you don't if you're watching this video, and you and your girlfriend have consensual sex every night for a year. Now, one night she gets blacked out drunk and she wants to have sex with you. Just like you guys have been doing for a year, the only difference being that she's blacked out drunk. It would not be immoral to have sex with your girlfriend in this scenario. It would not be rape, because probability-wise, it would probably increase the well-being. It is unlikely that she'll wake up and think, damn, I shouldn't have done that. Even though you guys have been doing the same thing every night for a year, or if that isn't good enough for you, let's say when she wakes up she says, oh, I want to get blacked out drunk again, and feel free to have sex with me if I come on to you, and she's completely fine with the fact that you guys had sex, the previous night when she was blacked out. If you guys had sex again while she was blacked out drunk, that would be unconsensual sex. But does it matter? No, because probability-wise, it does more good than bad to have unconsensual sex in this hypothetical. The same thing could be said about having a child. They didn't consent to being born, but probability-wise, if you take a survey of most people, I think you'll find that they were glad that they were born. When it can be said that they probably will be fine with something, they don't need to consent to that something.
The questionable example aside, there is a reason why most people would say that they were happy being born, and it's because of optimism bias. David Benetter in his book Better to Never Have Been, writes, there are a number of well-known features of human psychology that can account for the favorable assessment people usually make of their own life's quality. It is these psychological phenomena rather than the actual quality of a life that explain the positive assessment. The first being the Pollyanna principle, a tendency towards optimism. This manifests in many ways. First, there is an inclination to recall positive rather than negative experiences. For example, when asked to recall events from throughout their lives, subjects in a number of studies listed a much greater number of positive than negative experiences. The second being that very few people describe themselves as not too happy. Instead, the overwhelming majority claims to be either pretty happy or very happy. Indeed, most people believe that they are better off than most others or than the average person. And the third being habituation. When a person's objective well-being takes a turn for the worse, there is, at first, a significant subjective dissatisfaction. However, there is a tendency then to adapt to the new situation and to adjust one's expectations accordingly. Even if we were to think about this from an evolutionary standpoint, it would be most logical that we have an innate drive to want to continue living, as any being that did not desire to live, would be a genetic dead end, and an evolutionary failure. That's the video for today, people. Thank you for watching, and tell me any videos you would like me to respond to about antinatalism in the comments.